welcome to the Fireside Chat with Terri Mead.
Hi.
We are here in my house, which is a rare gift. I have amazing flowers.
They smell so good.
Yeah. It's spring in California, so it's a beautiful day. And I'm so excited to be here. Terri and I met at a group, an angels group called Send Angels. We immediately hit it off. And she's no longer there. I am still there, so you can tell which one is having more fun. But she's an amazing writer. She's doing, what's the name of your book?
It's called Piloting Your Life, and it's to embolden women over the age of 40 to take the controls and be the pilots in their own lives.
Okay, well, I want her to write something for people my age, which are much more senior than 40.
Well, the next book will be Piloting Your Health, and that'll probably be focused on women in general, not just the Gen Xers, which, you know, we're the lost generation. But this book is primarily for women who are 38 to 53, 54, the Gen Xers. The lost generation.
I'm still older than that. Sorry.
I know you are. There's a lot of stuff that's out there for, we're seeing more books coming out for your age group, and we're seeing more stuff to empower, you know, women as we get older. So there's a lot of good stuff coming up. Now is the time for women.
I think it's a great time to be a woman. And I think it is a great, great time to be a woman investing. And
absolutely.
And I'm actually going to talk in Spain. And I'm getting a prize in Spain next week.
Oh, congratulations.
For the work that I didn't know that I was doing, encouraging people to invest, especially women. I didn't know I was doing that.
Well, congratulations. Well deserved. High five.
Well, we need to do that for you too. But I invited Terri because it's always difficult to make an angel investor humane or human, whatever side of the globe you are in. And a lot of people come to my program. I have a program called Women Get Funded, and I run the Wealthy Institute. And a lot of people come to our program and they have this fantasy about who we are and what do we do, and they tend to think that we were born that way. And one of the things that I want to do in these calls is bring the humanity back to the business world, because we are women and we are human, or some of us do not identify with being women, but we are human beings. We have the same needs as most people have. And that is really, really important. Also, I see that the road to becoming an angel investor is not predictable for most people. And it's
there is no single path.
Yeah. And you wrote a post today about a roller coaster.
Oh yeah. My weekly in-flight entertainment. And I talked about just how the last week was a total roller coaster, but I'd have to say that the last 4 years have just been a total roller coaster since I even found that angel investing was a possibility for me.
That is so cool. And you had a cat issue. I mean, this is what people don't realize that angel investors go through. So, and everybody was concerned about her cat. And
who came this close to dying.
Yeah, and you know, so it's the cat. What's the cat's name?
Zuko.
Oh, and I have a question about your pets too.
So our two and a half cats, our dog, our snake, and our 4 chickens.
No, everybody just wants to know who's the half pet. Is that your husband?
No.
Oh, okay.
We got 2 brothers. We adopted them like 10 years ago, but one of them was a jerk to the other one. And so like 2 years ago, Domino said adios. And so he lives on the street and he lives at neighbors, but we take him to the vet. We make sure he has a flea collar. We check to make sure he's alive. So we still own him. We still are responsible for him because we're responsible pet owners, but he doesn't live at the house. Whereas Zuko, we adopted him a 1.5 years ago, and he totally stands up to Felix and is like, you know, bring it, you know. And so that's the
half. So it's not that you cut the pet, it's just that the petting relationship.
Yeah, I want to, you know, the humanity. I want to talk about 2 things that you said about angel investors being human. So one of them, I was just talking to a gal today, talking about how I struggle with this power the lack of parity in power. Do you want me looking over here? Or you want me looking over there?
Look at there. People are there.
So there's lack of parity with power in that the founders who have businesses who want money from investors somehow put themselves below and end up in this begging position or feeling like somehow investors are gods or rock stars or something else. And I think this is completely backwards, because really founders are the ones who are doing the hard work. And without founders starting up businesses and running businesses, investors have nothing to do. Investors can't be placing their bets on the horse and the jockey in order to figure out who's going to come out ahead in the race. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure that more female founders or underrepresented founders understand. Men already have like so many advantages, but the power disparity that I think is arbitrary, and it's created and it's perpetuated by a lot of investors because the investors like that power disparity. But I think what we need to do as founders, or I want to see more founders go, I have something of value that I'd like to offer you the opportunity to invest in, and not have it be a please invest in my company. So that's one thing I want to talk about, kind of because something that you said just triggered, I guess your mail just arrived, that triggered that. And there was one other thing that I've completely forgotten, but it'll come back around.
That's very interesting, because we have two completely different approaches to getting funded. One is the victimization. It's like, please give me money. And I'm glad you raised that issue, because we ran a campaign probably a month and a half ago, and we had a lot of people from Africa. And the biggest change that they received in their mindset was the realization that funding is a process and they can own that process. Mm-hmm. But if you've never had money that you earn in real terms, it's kind of confusing. And in some parts of the world, and this is a very international group, so mm-hmm. so we really want to tap into that feeling that you own your funding process. Mm-hmm. And it's an invitation. The way I tell people, this is like an invitation. Come to our party. It's an invitation to come to my business and be part of it and support my business, not out of pity, but because I'm going to give you a reward, and a reward that comes in many colors. I'm going to give you intellectual reward. You're going to learn a little bit about my business, and I'm going to give you emotional reward. You're going to share my successes, but I'm also going to give you financial reward. And the relationship that people have with money is very interesting one. The relationship that they have with somebody that can provide them that money, it's a huge, huge black box that we need to uncover.
No, absolutely. And I think since, just to give people perspective, you're very global. And I was born in San Francisco, grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've never lived anywhere but
horrible place.
I know, but the San Francisco Bay Area. And now I live in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I do travel to Europe. And I am trying to be more globally minded, but I do know that my perception, my perspective, my viewpoint is very, very narrow based on what I have here. The thing that's interesting about that, once again, what is wrong with my brain? I've already forgotten that thought. I'm perimenopause. I am in perimenopause, and perimenopause brain is real.
I'm over that.
No, it's just being from this area. So I know what I was talking about is the craziness that is the Silicon Valley. And it is very easy to get sucked up into the illusion of Silicon Valley. And I was talking last week about how, as an angel investor, I lean in because I get really excited about learning. I get excited about investing in founders, startups, with products and services that I want to have exist in the world. And I get super excited about the possibility. And then I go, what? And I take a step back and I look at it. I'm like, this is a whole multi-level marketing pyramid scheme. It's all about whoever's in the next level. You're always looking for the next valuation to show you've made something. And then for some like stooge to be at the final end to then provide you with the exit and the maximum reward, but not everybody benefits from it all over the place. And then I'm like, okay, that's just so cynical. And then I lean right back into it. But I think not every business should be funded by angel investors or venture capital. They don't all fit into those models, but I think once again, I'm not where any of you guys are out or gals are out in the rest of the world, but I just feel like there's this perception that the only path is through angel investor in venture in order to fund a business. And there's way too much glamorization about having a startup and then getting it funded. And I think we lose sight of business fundamentals and why we're really in business. And we can get caught up in this whole funding craziness that is the Silicon Valley.
That is so interesting, because that is actually what happens in Silicon Valley, but it doesn't happen in other parts of the world.
Yeah, but I see people coming here thinking that, seeing Hollywood, or seeing that California is just like Los Angeles is California, not realizing that California is a big state. And so they come here and they feel like they've got to be drinking the Kool-Aid. They feel like they have to be in it, in whatever, not realizing that there are a bunch of different ways to do it. And I talked to founders last summer when I went to Paris, and I went to Tallinn, Estonia, and I went to Nice, and I went to Berlin to talk about there are different ways to do it. Not every business has to get caught up in the craziness that is Silicon Valley. Because I see people drawn here, and then I see other investors saying, you have to move here. You have to bring your business here if you think you're going to be successful. And
that's not true.
No, it is absolutely not true. And I don't like that. And frankly, our highways are crowded enough. And I think innovation happens everywhere. And a lot of things come from people's lived experiences, and not everybody's lived experiences is the bubble of Silicon Valley.
That's great. Now, I have 2 comments to make on that. One,
do you want to tell them that we don't always agree?
They know that. Yeah, they know that. But that is actually the fun part, because if you agree on everything, first of all, it's kind of boring. And second, I always say that if she has her point of view and I have my point of view, there's a whole space here that it's
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So we can't reach outside of our comfort zone and look at new ways of exploration if we're set with people that think and look like us. And actually we do look a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
But so you had 2 points. What were 2 points?
So I have 2 points for that. One is, what is the purpose of the business? And you can create a business for many things, but I always thought that a business is a commercial excuse to solve a problem. So what you really want to do is you want to solve a problem, and the business is the vehicle that you use to solve that problem. And because I grew up socialist in a socialist country, I had to retrain myself to think about that. And the best way to do that I did that was to look at value. So how do you create value? And how do you slice the value that you created amongst a lot of people? Mm-hmm. And what you referred to, we call it jumping from round to round, and that's very pervasive in life sciences. And I used to work in life sciences.
Oh, it's pervasive.
So you never make money, and we have Uber that doesn't make money. It went all the way to the stock market, but you never make money. And the goal,
electric scooters. Don't get me started on them.
Have you gotten in one of them?
No, I'm not going to.
Yeah,
I don't want to die.
No, they need to make one for people that have high heels.
They just need to not exist, but that's a whole separate other thing.
Well, as you can see, we don't always agree, but I'll do the scooters with high heels.
Anyway, so yeah, so
but, the purpose of the round is to go from A to the next round and to extract as much money as you can. And there are systems in the world that are extractive. But the flip side of that was the mindset of a lot of African entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And I was just fascinated by a conversation I had with a very, very smart woman from Rwanda. And I might go to Rwanda in the fall. I'll tell you all about that. But this is what happens, because Rwanda itself was so destroyed. There was a lot of people giving them funds to lift the country. But those funds follow that principle. You know, the whole purpose of the funding is to get to the next funding route. It's not to create real value.
Well, and so there's a mix up between a stage of a business and a funding round.
Mm-hmm.
And a funding round is not a business stage.
No,
so
it's not.
To your point,
but so you need to understand how are you adding value in all the different slices of the stages. But the interesting thing is that a lot of people, and some of them have asked some questions, but a lot of people in the group started asking me, hey, I need money to do the school, I need money to do this. Everything was oriented towards social enterprises or to grants and give me money. And then my train of thought is, well, wait a second. How do you create value to other people? It ties up with what you're saying about the victimization and the victim, please give me money. No. You're not asking me for money. You're inviting me to a party. How am I going to have fun in your party? What am I going to get out of it? And that is the biggest change in people's mindset, is that I own my funding process because what I'm doing is something that is going to create value. Part of the value I'm going to share with the investors, but I'm also sharing that part of that value with the employees, with the clients, with the suppliers, with the government, because I pay taxes, with my community, and I'm going to take part of that. And that's a key issue for women, by the way, because most women don't feel entitled to taking a piece of their action for themselves because it's just good to make money. And I have received a lot of negative feedback as a woman myself, as a Latin American woman, say, well, you know, you need to do this for the benefit of others. Or I talked to some
what are you? That's charity or philanthropy. That's not commerce or business.
Well, that's whether I do it for whatever reason is my business. It's like my body is my body, my mind is my mind. My house is the bank's house until I pay. But you know, is that notion that because you are a woman, or because you come from a poor background, or because you are not privileged, your role in life should be helping others. Well, I want to support others, but that's not up to anybody but me.
I want to choose to do that. I don't have an obligation to do that.
Yes, so that is something that is very pervasive in funds that fund women-owned businesses. And there seems to be this link between, if you're a woman, you have to have some extra benefit. Well, no, you don't. You can do it any way you want it. And it's nobody's business.
Well, what's interesting though is, and I'm going to speak to most of the European companies that I've seen, and then also the American companies, generally speaking, the women who start the businesses want to do more than just make money. They want to have like a double or a triple bottom line. I was just listening to Mitch Kapor being interviewed by Jason Calacanis on the Angel podcast on my way over, and they have an impact fund. And so they make sure that it isn't just about returning investment, but it's also filling a gap. And this is the thing that I tend to see a lot of female founders doing, is they want to fill a gap. They want to solve a need that is beyond them, that has broader impact and isn't just about returning the money. And at the same time, I'm seeing more and more consumers choosing to vote with their pocketbooks and buying products that do good in addition to the products. So if they have a choice between, the Tom shoes, where, you know, you buy a pair of shoes and then a pair of shoes goes to someone who's less privileged. I'm seeing more and more probably millennial consumers who are choosing, if they have a choice between just buying a pair of shoes versus buying a pair of shoes and then having a benefit to someone else, they're choosing the one with the benefit. And it's been an interesting trend. So, but what you're saying is we can choose to do that. There should not be a market or societal expectation that we do that, which I absolutely agree with. And if we want to simply make money just to make money and we don't want to give back, it's not my approach, but I think that, you know, no woman should have to apologize, because no man is ever asked to apologize for that.
Yes. But I want to take it one step further, is that if you are a guy and you are born into poverty, or your family doesn't have a lot of means, it is also expected of you to help other people.
So
we don't realize
is that here, or is that in other countries?
Everywhere. And if you're in a minority, like the African Americans, it's expected of them to be the good guys if they're successful.
Okay. I don't know as much.
And it was interesting because I don't think, and if you are white and you come from a poor background, it is also expected of you that you give back something. Now, the American society is a very generous society, like I have not seen anywhere else. Okay. You have a lot of donations, and it's something beautiful. There's a crisis somewhere else, and people would donate something without getting anything in return. That's very unique, and that's very pretty about the American society.
Although it'll be interesting to see with the change in the tax laws, and that people aren't necessarily able to deduct charitable donations the way that they have been. I wonder how generous people would continue to be. It'll be interesting to see how that changes when people recognize that their tax bills are going up and they're not getting tax write-offs for some of those deductions.
Yeah, that's, you have an incentive that could change their behavior.
That incentive with the last tax change.
But there's also the incentive for depressed areas for real estate.
There are enterprise zones that are for investors to invest in startups or companies that are in those, and there are special financial or tax incentives.
Yeah, and also for real estate as well. So governments change.
Yeah, and then provide incentives for economic redevelopment.
Yeah. So we got distracted a little bit from what I want to talk. But
So let's go back to what you want to talk about.
This is part of the roller coaster.
Well, but it's also showing that I, as a human, I'm open to ideas. One of the things that I love about investing is, like you said, we get an opportunity to learn. And I think that, sometimes I do meet with founders who I don't plan to invest in, and I just want to learn what they're up to. I'm also a connector, so I want to know how I can help them. And so I will find a way to make an introduction or say, hey, did you know about this? And I'll share my knowledge and wisdom with the person. So there's an equal exchange. And I think, once again, a lot of founders don't understand that it is an equal exchange in that early time where the investor learns something that they may not have known before. And then you get the opportunity to pitch an invitation to the party. And then they have a chance to give their input or feedback or questions back that you can either choose to take or choose not to take. And I think that's one of the other things that I see a lot of, especially female founders do, go, oh, really? You think so? And it's like, ooh, hold your ground, say, well, thank you very much. That was thanks for that information, but not waffling on where you are. I see a lot of women doing that.
Yeah. How many times do you meet with somebody before you decide to invest?
It's changed. So should I give them a little background on how I became an angel investor?
Yeah, how did you become an angel investor?
Yeah, maybe I should give you.
Well, let's start with that.
So I've spent the last 20 years working in and with biotech, med device, diagnostic, and digital health companies. I have an MBA in New Venture Small Business Management, and I worked in IT departments or technology departments. So I'm a business person who understands technology, and I use it to optimize business performance, get products to market faster within biotech, help the companies get to commercialization faster.
How did wait.
Yeah.
How did you get an interest into that? Because she's also a helicopter pilot. How did you get, which is very unusual, how did you get into that? Because you also have a twin sister, right?
Yeah, I fell into it. So
you fell into it? Were you pushed into it?
No, I fell into it. So my dad had a CPA firm when I was growing up,
an accounting
firm. So I was doing, at 16, I worked for him, and I was doing tax returns and financial statements. And by the age of 20, I was doing audits and reviews. And I was going to college, and I was like, I don't want to be an accountant for the rest of my life. And so graduated, bounced around, did a couple things. And then I decided my husband was going to grad school, and I'm like, well, I'll go to grad school. So I managed, so I was like, I got my MBA. He did not, but that's okay. And so, but in working for my dad's firm, my sister did I have an identical twin sister. She did for a very short period of time, but had no interest in it. And so she went and did other things. I have a brother who's 3 years younger. I think he spent one tax season working with the firm, and then he left. So I was the only one who kind of stuck around. And I would get farmed out to our clients who were often had small businesses and family businesses. And so someone had a law firm, somebody with, their accounts receivable person, billing person was going on vacation for the summer. I'd get farmed out to go work in there. My dad's and a business partner started up a candy and nut distribution company the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. They needed help with it. I helped set up candy and nut distribution company. So I got farmed out, and I got a really weird, random amount of experience in all sorts of different areas. And so when I finished grad school, my husband and I wanted to move back to San Francisco. So he got a job at Oracle.
Where were you located?
We were just in the East Bay.
Okay, but it's still around
We're
here.
still, yeah, but we were across the bay, and we wanted to be in San Francisco. So he went and did telesales with Oracle, and I thought, well, I want to be a financial analyst. And so I got a financial analyst job at NorCal Waste Systems, which was the California garbage company with 28
so exciting.
But they were doing a system implementation, a financial manufacturing distribution type of system implementation. And so when they brought me in, they said, we're doing a JD Edwards implementation. I said, E.G. Edwards? And they said, no, J.D. Edwards. And I thought, okay, well, worst case scenario, I hate it. I give them 30 days notice, and then I'm out of there. And I fell into what became my life's work for the last 20 years, which, because I have a natural and very process oriented, I can very easily see how technology fits into it. And I'm a natural project manager. So I can pay attention to details, but because of the work I did as an accountant, I was able to take a step back and I could see the bigger picture. All of this has actually helped me as an investor.
Of course.
So then we rolled it out to 28 subsidiaries in California, and I was like, I love this work. I want to do more. So I went into consulting, and the first job that they dropped me on was in a biotech company. And so I fell into biotech doing a JD Edwards implementation. And they promised they wouldn't drop me in without any support. They didn't give me any support. The company, the biotech company, the CFO and the head of IT liked me so much, they bought me out of my contract. And so I went to work for them.
What is it? JD
Edwards. So JD Edwards is like an SAP or an Oracle or a NetSuite. It's an enterprise resource planning system. Sometimes you have manufacturing resource planning. So it's an integrated financial, manufacturing, distribution. It's what you can use to run your business.
And from an accounting perspective?
No, because you can use it to manage your manufacturing, use it to manage your inventory, use it to manage your sales. Some of them have CRMs, customer relationship management. Some of them have, it's just an integrated system. I would say accounting is at the core, just because everything is money. But you can manage your sales. You can integrate all sorts of different. You have human resources, payroll. All of any business function can be part of an enterprise resource planning or an ERP system.
Okay, but that's what it is.
Yeah,
it's essentially. Know. I didn't know what it was.
Okay, so yeah, it's like an integrated system to manage your business. So then, when I fell into biotech, it was even better because biotech is regulated, and I'm all about process and documentation. And so then I learned about some things that are specific to an FDA, Food and Drug Administration, regulated space, and it was a natural fit. And so I worked for one company for 3 years, got laid off, worked for another company for 3 years, got laid off. And then I started consulting 14 years ago. And then 4 years ago, I realized that there's an arrogance of science that didn't appreciate my value or my whole value proposition. And so I talked to a helicopter buddy of mine who said, you should look into angel investing, at which point I said, I could do that? It didn't occur to me that I could do it. What's ironic is when I worked for my dad's accounting firm, my dad had all sorts of investments and retirement plans and all of this. And I would help him track the value of all of these accounts and these transactions. And so, I mean, I knew about all of that stuff. My dad invested in startups. He was on the board of a startup and ended up having some, you know, an amazing exit out of that they do just fine now. But I didn't really know my dad was doing that. He got us to invest in stuff over the last, 25, 30 years. But it was more like things that were more like tax shelters. So whether it was oil and gas, or it was real estate investment trusts, or it was storage facilities, he got us, he introduced us to investments that I would make, but they weren't startups. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the details because my dad, who was, a financial wizard, was making the recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And so one would say, well, wait, you saw your dad doing all of that. Your dad was on boards and all that. Why wouldn't it occur to you to know that angel investing was a possibility? And it's because it just wasn't part of anything that anybody I knew around me was doing. I didn't think that I had the right technical background. I didn't think I had enough money to do it. But I checked the boxes in terms I was an accredited investor here in the United States, which meant that I met a certain income threshold or a certain net worth threshold. And it wasn't a matter of, there's no test to take. It's a matter of getting exposed to the opportunities, picking what you want to invest in, and then making sure you're investing through the right vehicles, whether it's through some sort of a debt instrument like a convertible note or a safe note, or through something that it provides equity. And so I got introduced to Sandhill Angels. It was a little rough getting in, but I'm not going to share that story. And
that's a very juicy story, but
I don't know if you want me to share that one. Let's just say I encountered resistance in joining the group because I didn't fit the typical profile,
mm-hmm.
quote unquote typical profile. And it didn't occur to me that it was really these particular people, the way for these particular people to try to force women and others who were not like them to self-select out so that they could keep it a fairly homogenous group. You may or may not agree with that, but I saw it kind of over and over again. So when I started investing, I jumped in because I wanted to learn as much as possible. I called it my 2-year real life PhD. And I figured I allocated a certain amount of money to invest. I wanted to learn as much as possible. And then I figured whatever my next step was going to come out of my investing. So I actually didn't expect to really keep doing it after the 2 years, but I'm now kind of it was, all I could see was, let me try it.
You can't go back.
Oh my God. It's too much fun. That's why I was like, I lean in and then I lean out and then I lean in. And so it has been the thing for me personally, and I know you want to talk about investing, but the human side of me, it has opened up. If somebody had said I'd have a podcast, an episode 100 of my podcast dropped at the end of last month. It's called Piloting Your Life. The last season was all about women's
Piloting health. Your life. I'm going to put it on the notes.
And that's available on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and, a bunch of different platforms. But last season was all about, it was all about women's health. And the season before was on female founders who'd raised Series A and beyond, female investors, and anyone supporting the ecosystem. And I had Alicia on there. I don't remember when I had you on there. It wasn't last season, but Alicia, I've interviewed. It was a fun No, it was last fall. It was a fun interview because we argued. And we still love each other.
Yeah. Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
We need to find something to argue about.
I'm sure we'll come across something. So it has been so educational. I have been exposed to so much that I would never have known. It has made me, I've become educated, and I'm using my voice and my platform for greater good in terms of raising awareness about investing in women's health, investing in how smart it is to invest in female founders, to invest in diverse founder groups, that, not everything has to be produced here in the Silicon Valley, that there are market demands and needs outside of here that we can't possibly understand. But if we can practice radical empathy, we can imagine that there is a need, and that a startup can provide, can meet that need and actually make a lot of money for the founders and for the investors at the same time.
And create a lot of value for the economy and real jobs and taxes.
Yes,
and,
I mean, yes, thank you for
socioeconomic development.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So if somebody said I'd be writing a book, also called Piloting Your Life, I would have said you were nuts. I spoke on unconscious bias last week at a local medical device company.
What is unconscious bias?
Unconscious bias is when you have a bias that you're not aware of. So there are overt biases that you can be aware of, but unconscious ones are decisions that you make based on something that's deep down that you don't even know about it. So let me give you an example of one, and one of the reasons why I'm not in Sandhill Angels. You have tougher skin than I do.
You accused me of not having tougher skin once.
It's selective.
And I think you were right. I'm like, oh, I think you're right.
So
I don't need to be right.
So we just have to respect each other. So do you remember Nomiku? Were you there when Nomiku? Nomiku was like a countertop device that heated food and it would cook it. And so what families could do is they could put these packages of food like vegetables and whatever, and then a protein on the other side. And then they could set it so that it would start at a certain time, so that like a family or a couple or a single person could come home and their food was already prepared. And we saw it was a sous vide kind of device. And I remember, this gal, it was a husband and wife team. And I thought, this is really very interesting. It's a hardware thing, it was an expensive thing, but their approach was really very novel in terms of, it was like the razor blade model, which is the device was less expensive, and they were going to make money on, not only that, but having the accessories, et cetera. And so I remember this older white guy in the back going, I wouldn't use this. Why would anybody else use this? And I was like, oh, this is the problem. So he could not step out of his own bias, his own perspective, to be able to practice what I call radical empathy, to be able to see that there might be a need for it beyond something that he could have. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. But now I want to talk about how do we solve that problem? Because the problem is not that people think that way. The problem is that people talk that way and nobody stops them. That's where the problem is.
Oh, I stopped it.
And that's where we intervene.
I did. And I turned around and I said, you may not, because I'm sure you're not the one who's preparing food in your household. And I'm sure
Well, that was your unconscious bias.
No, because I know that his wife has stayed at home and I knew that.
Okay.
I knew that. So.
Because sometimes that's.
You're right. No,
sometimes guys cook.
My husband stays home with the kids and cooks every single night. So
yeah, my son cooks.
Yeah, no, but this guy, I know his wife stayed home to take care of the kids. He did not have to take care of any of the household related stuff. And I said, just because you can't imagine it doesn't mean that there aren't others out there who can imagine it. And I said, and we need, I don't remember what I said after that. That was a couple of years ago, but I did call him out on it going, dude, because that's the problem that we have right now.
Yeah, and then the other issue is that it takes a lot of courage to stand up, but it takes more courage to support the person that stands up. And that's what people don't understand. You don't need one, you need two.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody stood up to support me.
And then that's a problem, because the people that stand up then get ostracized and they leave. But it takes more courage to stand up and say, if I were there, I would say, well, probably say, oh, I don't want to bother with that. But it takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, hey, she's right, or whatever. But then you also brought Tomboy X.
I didn't bring Tomboy X, but
no, you didn't.
I didn't bring Tomboy X, but the moment that I saw it, I'm like, I'm in. I mean, she hadn't spoken when she got started. I think I was the first one to say, this is amazing. And I think there were other people around me who were like, why?
But I think your influence made a lot of people think differently. And it was a breakthrough for us. St. Hill Angels was formed by technology, mostly Harvard guys.
They're a bunch of semiconductor guys.
And so of course we have a bias, because that's what most people understand. I don't understand that, but I like
and
things.
It's more comfortable, and you have to work hard to understand something that's outside your comfort zone.
Yes. Well, I have my investment thesis on things that I like and things that I enjoy. Biotech is one of them. But I also have a little bit of my investments that I place on things that I don't know. And it's not a bet. I do that because I'm curious. I want to learn something. And sometimes because I want to support the entrepreneur. So sometimes I would put a little bit, it's not a lot. I would put a little bit of money to support the entrepreneur. Sometimes I get surprised and sometimes they fail. But for me, it's like learning a new thing. Every year I take a class on something I've never taken before. So for me, this is just very exciting. And I think a lot of people who are angel investors, they don't have necessarily a huge amount of money, but they want to contribute and they want to be active. It's not passive. That's the other thing. The best angel investors are not passive. If you just want the money, it's too expensive for you. So don't use it. It is like free consulting. And excuse my unconscious bias about consultants, but a consultant might tell you, this is what you need to do, because a consultant is also thinking, I want to have more consultancies. So they're selling.
I have lost out on work because I've talked people out of doing something because I look at it from a macro level where I don't want people to waste time. I don't want them to waste money. It's inefficient and it doesn't move us forward. So, but you're right. Most consultants
I do that too. I think about adding value. If I can't add value, I don't want to be there. And there's people, and I know, and there's people that just want to get busy. They don't want to get things done. I'm an engineer. I see input, transformation, output. If I don't have enough information, or if I don't have enough influence in the transformation, then why should I be there? Life is too short.
Life is too short. I've got other stuff I need to do. Yeah. So Tomboy X, just in case people don't know, Tomboy X, what I love about this is they created underwear. Initially, it was underwear and bras for a lesbian segment. So the women who were going into the men's department to buy boxers and T-shirts and stuff, it didn't fit them well. And so they wanted to create something that was for this population. What they soon found is that there was a plus size market that loved their product. And so they stumbled into, no pun intended, a huge opportunity. What I really love about what they're doing is it was their messaging around underwear for any body. So I am all about inclusivity. I'm all about, my daughter is I can't stop. My daughter is non-binary, goes by the pronouns they, them. And I have a lot of gay friends. I have a lot of lesbian friends. I have trans friends. And I saw them not only being inclusive and providing undergarments, swimwear, and I think they've moved into some loungewear, but they're redefining the definition of beauty. And I love this. And I also, so this is like doing well and doing good at the same time. And I see an opportunity to make a lot of money and change a lot of things in the world. And I love the founders, Fran and Naomi. I interviewed Fran for my podcast last fall because she is the CEO of a Series A company now. Although I think they just raised a Series B. It was like 18 or 19 million. I just saw that. And she talked about her evolution as a founder into a CEO. And I think, and I'm just going to throw this out there, most men are given the chance to evolve, and a lot of what female founders are expected to have it all from the get-go. And it drives me absolutely crazy. And I constantly point back to, well, look, they allow a founder to grow with the organization, to learn as they go along, and to evolve as the company evolves as well. And when I see a lot of female founders who are told, well, you're fine right now, but we're going to have to replace you when you get to this particular stage. And I never see male founders, and I'm sure it happens, but I never.
It happened with Google.
But I don't.
Common.
But I don't see a lot of men told that, and I find that incredibly frustrating. So I love to see the Jennifer Heinmans with Rent the Runway, or the Christina Lakes with Stitch Fix. We've seen Glossier, we've seen some other companies where we need more female founders to evolve into successful CEOs, so that we have good role models to point to, not only for the founders, but for the investors, to say, look, stop pushing back. They evolved. Look at how successful they are. So stop saying that women can't do this. I'll get off my soapbox. Anyway, so Tomboy X, I loved it from the get-go. A lot of other people were kind of looking at me.
But it was a big success in Sand Hill Angels. A lot of people invested in them part of it was because it was a very interesting deal, but part of it was because you were very vocal about it. So yeah.
I didn't know that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And I love their advertisement.
Oh my God.
Because there's no body shaming, and it's really, really cool. So I'm gonna put some in the video so people can see it. But I wanna get to some of the questions.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, audience.
Sorry. Yeah. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
No.
So what is your definition of entrepreneur?
Well, so it's interesting because I don't consider myself one, but I should consider myself one, because I've had a consulting business for 14 years, and it's been so successful. It's been successful enough that I've generated enough income to be able to do angel investing, to hit the thresholds, to make it so that I'm an accredited investor, to be able to do those. As a consultant, I would bring in subcontractors periodically to work on projects, but a lot of times it was just me. So I suppose in some cases I was a solopreneur, but I mean, I have to do business development. I have to do the accounting. I have to do, the invoicing. I have to stay current on regulations and be sharp in the work that I execute. I have to do social media. I do brand type stuff. Speaking at a conference in June on 2 things related to some regulatory stuff. I'm an advisor on that conference. So I have to go out and make my presence known so that I'm seen as a subject matter expert. So
you're writing a book, you're doing the podcast.
I'm writing the book.
All of these are entrepreneurial activities.
It's
related to proactivity. So
really what it is a little bit of imposter syndrome to say, well, but I don't fit that particular, what somebody would say is the profile of an entrepreneur.
Oh, that's our book.
Yeah, so I'll read this one, I guess, and then I'll start owning my stuff. So I looked up the definition of entrepreneur at one point to see if I could claim that label, and the definition was like all that I was talking about. So I can claim that label. I feel like I minimize what I've done, and it's an imposter syndrome thing.
Okay, I'll give you the categorization of entrepreneurs that I did from my PhD.
Oh, okay.
You're an entrepreneur. You're just not a harvester entrepreneur.
Oh, you're going to have to explain that to me later.
A harvester entrepreneur is an entrepreneur that takes a company to the position where they can harvest their own wealth and they
Yeah.
exit. So, you know, the Bill Gates, those are the prototypical harvesters because they go and they take the
So then what am I?
entrepreneur out. But well,
What's the label for me?
you are an entrepreneur. You are a I just say you are a hybrid entrepreneur.
Okay.
Because you're an entrepreneur, you're an investor too.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have a whole bunch of other things. What advice do you give to women raising funds? And then, do you think there's a difference for people in Silicon Valley or outside of Silicon Valley?
Yes. So I haven't been to Africa, I haven't been to India. I've done a little bit of stuff in Europe. I haven't been to South America. So this is
or maybe to other people outside of Silicon Valley within the US.
Okay, so let me just kind of focus on that.
So what advice do you give people? Okay, so there's three things. What advice do you give women raising funds?
Yep.
And do you think there's a difference between Silicon Valley and outside of Silicon
Valley? I'm gonna start with one. I think for anyone trying to raise funds, either inside, if you are not from Silicon Valley and you don't have connections in the Silicon Valley, whether you're a man or a woman, it's tougher to raise funds in the Silicon Valley, especially at the early stages. And the reason why I say that is early stage investing, when you're angel investors, it's a relationship game. And so a lot of times what you're doing is you're not necessarily putting your investment into whatever the product or the service is. A lot of times what you're really, and I'm going to use the term betting on, but it's really not betting. Where you're putting your money behind from a confidence perspective is into the founders. And so it's harder for angel investors, and especially since we have so many opportunities to invest here in the Silicon Valley, if you know people or you're 1 to 2 degrees away, you can get to know someone and you can trust them based on the relationship that you develop, it's easier to make those investments. So when people come from outside to do fundraising, I think it's harder because it's harder to build those relationships. It's harder. A lot of angel investors don't like to invest outside because they don't have any eyes on the ground to really, or feet on the ground and eyes close by to really keep an eye on the investment and make sure that things are going well. You have to travel to be able to see more, closely see what's happening. What's interesting though is everything's gotten really expensive here in the Silicon Valley. So like for me, and I will come back to your questions, I really don't invest in Silicon Valley based companies anymore. I stopped investing, I think about a year or two ago, because they got too expensive. My average check size is like 10 or 15,000 US dollars. And a lot of times I will double and triple down. Like I tripled down into Tomboy X, I've doubled down into my health teams, I've tripled down into Zoom, which is the scheduled rides for kids 5 and up, based here in the Silicon Valley. So I think we're starting to see more investors who are seeing that it's very expensive and are looking for more opportunities outside of the Silicon Valley. So I think it's just hard for men or for women. One of the other things that I'm seeing for men and women who are coming to the Silicon Valley who are in other areas, and just last week I met this gal who was from either Houston or Austin. I think she bounces back and forth. She knows nothing about the ecosystem. She knows nothing about angels and VC. And so there's a really steep learning curve on how it all works. And so a lot of them come in and they go straight to big venture capital firms, whether it's Andreessen or Sequoia or Caper Capital or NEA, and they start there and they spend a lot of time on the big name firms, not realizing that they don't necessarily invest in early stage companies. They don't write checks at that level because they have huge funds and they have to write big checks. And if you're coming in and you're raising, $1 million or $500,000, that,
it's not worth
their time. And so I see a lot of people coming from outside thinking that they could just come in, tap into the well of cash that's, capital that's flowing, not realizing that there's there's a lot going on there. And so that is for male and for female founders coming in. For female founders, it's the recommendations. So put together, have an idea of how much you want to raise, why you want to raise it, who you want to raise it from, like what kind of investors do you want to have, and then do research on who's matching, who's a good target. I heard the term a number of years ago called shotgun fundraising, where you just go out and you just talk to everybody, and it's incredibly inefficient and it's demoralizing. So what's better is to do research, just to look at sites like Crunchbase, where you can get access for free. You can go find companies that are similar to yours who've raised money, and see who's invested in those companies, and start to kind of pay attention to who's out there investing in your space. And then I would start following them on Twitter. I would follow them on other social media. Some of them have newsletters, some of them have podcasts. Subscribe to those, get to know them, and then you can actually start building digital relationships. So respond to a tweet, reshare a tweet, or if you see them on LinkedIn and you see a post, comment on it. You can even send a message. I have often communicated with people with newsletters, whether it's Brad Feld or Fred Wilson. I send stuff to his wife, Joanne. I know she reads them, but she doesn't respond to them. But Brad Feld, I've never met in person, but he and I have exchanged messages back and forth. But I pick and choose based on something where I know I can provide value to him. So just think in terms of providing the value. One of the things I remember one of the things I wanted to talk about from earlier from a human perspective. Back in October, I was exhausted and burnt out as an investor. I was allocating every Monday from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. to schedule 30 to 60 minute conversations with founders and investors around the world in order to build relationships, help them. I was advising startups, and I got to be seen as a walking checkbook. And people never asked, I have this great thing, do you want to hear about it? They would just come at me, and I would be like, oh my God, I'd get cornered, and I'd be like, oh, I don't invest in your space. But, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, oh my God. And there was very little concern. People would be, and I appreciate founders who are really excited and passionate about what they're doing, but they were so caught up in them, they didn't see that I was traumatized and that maybe I wasn't interested. And I was giving a lot and doing a lot to build the ecosystem and trying to create a global mesh network of like-minded investors to make it easier for women to get access to capital. And I got completely burnt out. So as a founder, get to know the investor. So you make sure that you're targeting them, that you can connect with them on a relationship level, connect with them as humans, and not just see them as walking checkbooks who can add value to your company. In putting together your pitch deck, make sure, I can give you a link. I have a blog post on what I look for in a pitch, and it's got various different elements. I even did a podcast to talk about that. In terms of, there are various different elements, and you can put it together there's a formula, but you can put it together in a story that can appeal to and pique the interest of the investor. Because the first thing you need to do is grab our attention. And that's by, telling us the story. And it's not necessarily starting with the sob story. It's, here's this huge problem, and here's the market opportunity associated with it. And this is what I say to a lot of women: dazzle the 92% primarily male VCs, and there are a lot of male angel investors. And until we need to dazzle them with dollars to grab their attention, to say, hey, this is this huge opportunity, and this is what we're doing in order to solve it, and this is why we're going to win, and this is who we are. And and then you just kind of check off all those boxes so that the investor is like, wow, this person's really got it together, and they're selling me on a business proposition and not a, will you please invest in
it's
my
a great
company,
deal.
you
It's a
know,
great
to
deal.
just make sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the other thing that I often coach female founders on is make sure that you put out a big vision. Because a lot of times what we women do, probably not Alicia, but a lot of us only put out there what we know we can achieve. And what happens is that if an investor sees, and I'm generalizing, but this happens over and over again, a lot of times men will put out, you know, creating a rocket to Jupiter. And a lot of women will say,
and we're going to do it 100 times per year in 2 years,
and we're going to do it within a year,
and it's
yeah, exactly, and it's going to be humongous and whatever. And everybody knows it's completely unrealistic, but a lot of investors are like, wow, that's amazing, I want in on that. Whereas a lot of women will just put out, well, we're going to reach the atmosphere and we're going to do it within, 18 months, and we're going to do it on time, and we're going to do it on budget, and we're going to be profitable, and we're just going to nail it. And it's like, oh, but that's just not as exciting. There's not a big enough opportunity for me as an investor to, not me, but as some of these investors to get excited about. So what I coach a lot of women on is like, I know it feels uncomfortable, but show the big vision. Think bigger and put it out there. And I get pushback, and it's like, well, I'm not sure that I can achieve that. It's like, it doesn't matter. Do you think this guy can achieve this? He doesn't care.
Oh, you're not going to achieve it now, but you will be able to. It ties into growing from entrepreneur to CEO.
It's just like, but let's put it out there until we can get the guys to put in more reasonable and rational presentations, proposals, etc. We lack parity, so we have to play at that level. So I coach them to put a bigger vision, dazzle them with bigger opportunities, knowing that, especially with early stage, they're not going to be held to that 100%. And the expectation with early stage is that you're going to have to potentially pivot 7 times till Sunday. And so there's no straight line from here to there. And so you may as well say, okay, this is where I want to get to, and this is where we're going to start with, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how much money we need to do it. The other thing that I see female founders do, and I coach them on, is they're like, okay, I need $342,000, $566, and $342,506.17. And I'm like, oh, you don't have to work it out to that level, and especially don't put that into like a pitch or initial proposal. Take that number and then double it. And that's what I recommend, generally what they go out and do, because a lot of women tend to be
I'm going to discount any deal that you bring.
No, not. But a lot of times they underestimate the amount that it's going to take, and they don't take into account that investors are going to want to see them growing at a faster rate. And a lot of times I'll ask them, well, what if you had more money? Well, we could do this faster, we could do this, we could do that. I'm like, okay, let's double so that you can achieve those. So that, because you're thinking too small.
Well, it is well known and well researched that women are better at managing assets. So return over investment and return over assets is much higher for women. What women don't do well is validate their creativity and their effort into the equity position. So that is why, and we do cover that in the class.
Good.
In the program, because that's why women businesses are smaller. Not because they don't have an impact, it's because the equity, they didn't calculate that properly. So the equity is smaller because they ask for less investments and they do more. So they really should have more equity to balance that.
Yeah, we need to stop undervaluing what it is.
But we can do that because we do it to ourselves.
Yeah, no, this is our own self-sabotage. Yeah.
So, well, and we don't know that. And also a lot of people give women the wrong suggestions because people are not used to women thinking big. So they're afraid for you. And that's one thing that I've discovered, that people tend to give you the advice to be safe and to be caring and nurturing because there's 2 things. They don't want to tell you the truth. So women lack the feedback that they need.
Yes.
And so, because people sugarcoat it and you don't understand that. And if somebody tells you the hard truth, you're going to go to your friends and say, well, they didn't like me. So there's a problem.
Well,
so
there's another, the feedback isn't about whether they like you at all. We need to decouple who we are from that information.
So we do cover that too.
Okay.
In the negotiations, but that's part of the issue. But it's not only for women. If you are young, or if you're Latina, or if you are African American, they do that too. So it's not only for women, but they just diminish.
Yeah.
They reduce, sugarcoat. They reduce.
I'm not sure about the young piece, because I have seen so many pitches from some young and very cocky guys who have had no work experience.
Oh, actually, you're right. For young women. Yeah,
oh,
you're right.
okay.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
No, I mean, they're delusional
right.
and thinking they have so much more value than they actually do.
Or they come from the University of Heroes.
Oh, which, Stanford or?
No, I'm not going to say the name, but there's the University of Heroes. That you know what a hero is? The immigrants from Syria and Venezuela. Those are the heroes. So.
Oh, yeah. So it was interesting. So one of the things, so my undergrad is from Cal State East Bay, which is just across the way, and it's one of the least expensive, maybe I think it is the least expensive California state school in the state system. I got my MBA there 20 plus years ago. Which is crazy because my MBA costs $5,000, and I'm looking at college for my son who's graduating in 24 days, and it's not $5,000 even a semester. But anyway, one of the things that I get super frustrated by being in the Silicon Valley, especially, is just the difference between the haves and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. And the fact that some people win the socioeconomic lottery and some people don't. And those, like, I see going to Cal State East Bay, and a lot of them are the first ones in the family to go to school, and they're super smart and they're super hardworking, and chances are they're working a job and going to school and trying to help support the family. And I'm like, I wanted to find a way to bridge the gap between, it's 18 miles between, or 20 miles between, like, Stanford and Cal State East Bay, between the Silicon Valley and there. And I'm like, we have such an untapped group of innovators, of workers, of just people that are the forgotten ones because they didn't win the socioeconomic lottery. And I was listening on this podcast with Mitch Kapor, who was talking about just this, is that you're born in the wrong zip code, or you're not born into the right family with the right connections and the right amount of money. And he was talking about, we're missing, and I absolutely agree, and this is the first time I'd heard it from him, is they're looking to tap into those founders because they come from a different lived experience and they see things a different way. And a lot of them are super, super scrappy because they've had to be really creative about piecing together and working really, really, really hard. And
I know. I was one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I came here with 2 boxes and 2 kids. So yes. nobody can tell me that. But I was privileged because I could hear, I could see, I knew enough English, and other reasons. But when people tell me raising funds is hard because you're a woman, I tell them, what is hard? Go and live in Syria. Go and live in Venezuela. Go and live in North Korea. That is hard. Well, what we have is not hard. Well, it is difficult, but it's not hard.
Well,
we can manage that, and we're changing that. I told you we're going to have a disagreement tonight.
It's slow. I think to say that, well, you're not in Syria or whatever, basically diminishes somebody's feeling, and it invalidates their particular experience. So as long as people aren't saying, it's hard and they're play victim, you can say, look, this is really challenging and this is hard, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we can work towards it. But I would say, and I'm going to throw in something personal, back in September when I was on suicide watch with my son, that was hard. And
that is very hard.
So as a privileged white woman, I'm educated. I am, how I introduce myself at the Unconscious Bias, I'm cisgender. So I was born a female. I am heterosexual. I am gender conforming, white woman, educated. My parents are educated. I've been married for 23 years. My parents have been married for 50. My parents, and still live in the area. My husband's parents have been married for 50 years. They're both educated. So I come from a lot of privilege, and I recognize that privilege, and I'm trying to use that privilege for good. But in September, that was hard. And this whole year has been hard. And I sometimes I go, my God, stop having a pity party, because look at Syria, look at what's happening in Venezuela. And I go, God, you can't feel like it's hard. I'm like, no, I can feel like it's hard, because it's hard.
I choose what is hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's hard for me at that moment. It doesn't mean that I'm going to lay down and say, okay, fine, I'm done. I'm not going to have the vapors or something. But I can still say that this is a hard thing, and sometimes go, I'm just going to be kinder and gentler with myself today, because I'm just not as, ready to battle the world. And then, I recover, and then I'm back battling the world.
Well, I think that's the same thing that everybody goes through. It's not the size of the challenge that validates that is a challenge.
Yeah.
But the real issue is that you need to get back on track. And
yeah, absolutely.
You take your time, recoup, and get back on track. But we are
out of time.
Out of time, but I always give the person the last words, and it cannot be anything bad about myself, because I've been great.
I love you. I would never say anything bad. Gosh, what do people typically say?
No, I'm not telling. What are you talking about? I'm not telling. Say something that comes from your heart.
I'm gonna circle back.
The one thing you want people to know.
So I'm gonna circle back to the way you started. Well, I'm not going to advertise that. I'm going to circle back. Now is the time for women. Mm-hmm. Here in the U.S.,
everywhere in the world.
No, but I'm just going to say, here in the U.S., I feel like there's a war on women. There's a war on poverty. There's a war on LGBTQ+. There's a war on brown people, Black people, poor people. We are really battling. But for women specifically right now, we are coming together. We are using our voices. I am seeing new fund managers. I'm seeing new investors, and this is globally. I am seeing a wave of energy in a way that I have never seen before. And I think part of the reason that we're kind of here at war here in the United States is those who have been previously, who have held the power before and held the money before, are scared, and they're hanging on with their fingernails onto their power, because they perceive life as pie, that it's only this big. But that's not the way that women see it. We see it as much more collaborative. And so I think we have the opportunity to add trillions of dollars to our economy by activating more female founders, for us pursuing our dreams, for more women getting involved in investing, and for more of us coming together, supporting each other, putting our arms around each other, and moving us all forward, because together we are going to go much further. So how's that?
That's great. That's great. And you know what? Women choose or influence 80% of purchasing decisions. So support a woman. Buy from a woman, support a woman, tell her you're doing this right, and you need to improve this. Give her also the rooms for improvement as well. And you don't have to agree with everybody, but this is the time for women. This is
our time.
Yeah.
And
I'm so happy, because I still have memory, and I'm not that old that I have dementia, so I can still leave that.
Well, and there was a gal from the UN who was I went to the Cartier Innovation Awards that were held here in San Francisco, and there was a woman who was from some part of Africa, and I can't remember what it was, who was talking about some of the exciting things that are happening where women are coming together to invest. They talked about the microloans, mafia, or they ghetto, microloan ghetto. Apparently that's not, I don't know enough about that. but they're coming together. They didn't have a bank who would lend to women. So some women came together and created a bank. And then I think there was a group of like angel investors that were in a couple different countries, and Morocco, some women in Morocco saw what was happening in some of these countries and said, show me how to do it. And this is what we have to do, is we have to be models for others. And then when we see something that we want to emulate, go, tell me how to do it. Show me. And if you're the one who's asked, show them.
Yeah. We're all in this together.
Yeah, we have such an opportunity to change the world for the better right now. And it feels some days like it's kind of falling apart, but I think it's kind of the last ditch effort on the part of the patriarchy, who's holding on with their fingernails to something that we are really starting to shift. So don't give up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Terri, for
Oh,
being here.
pleasure.
And I'll put some links there.
Okay,
and
now I can see.
Yeah.
Bye. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.